A 93-year-old former camp guard at Auschwitz is on trial. 300,000 counts of accessory to murder. How is it that all these years later, this man's coming to trial now? And what are the prospects of a conviction? Let's say good morning to Dr. Dvir Abramovich, who's with the Historical and Philosophical Studies Department at the University of Melbourne. Dr. Abramovich, good morning to you.
Good morning, Leon. Good to be with you.
Can you explain how it is that all of these years later, this man, Oskar Groening, is coming to trial?
Well, that's right. Well, this trial, which has opened, is the first in a series of high-profile prosecutions, as the German government is really scrambling to bring some of those responsible for the Holocaust to justice while there is time. The reason it's taking place is because a legal precedent was set back in 2011, and this trial is in fact the first to take place since a key ruling happened then when a former Sobibor death camp guard, a man by the name of Ivan Demaniuk, was found guilty of being an accessory to the murder of about 28,000 Jews at the Sobibor extermination camp. Now, before that, for decades, the German legal reasoning was that camp guards could only be prosecuted if there was a specific evidence that they committed a crime against a specific person. But what happened then in 2011 is the German prosecutors won an accessory to murder conviction against Demaniuk under the theory, and that's an interesting one, and I think it's a key point to understand, that since the sole purpose of a death camp was murder, anyone who could be proven to have served there could be found guilty of being an accessory. So really there was a huge and dramatic change in German prosecution policy since then, which has enabled bringing Groening to trial. And the ruling overturned years of German legal precedent.
And thus makes it possible, even at this late stage, for numbers of people to come to trial on charges similar to this one. 300,000 counts of accessory to murder. And this man, Oskar Groening, the former SS guard, has been fairly frank, it seems, in his admissions in this trial.
Yes, I mean, he is really one of the special cases. You know, he is one of the few former Nazis to actually speak out. He has admitted to serving at Auschwitz between 1942 and 1944 as a member of the SS, but he has denied any involvement in the killings. And in fact, I just read a report whereby he admitted during the beginning of the trial that he's morally complicit. So, you know, he's always denied personal responsibility for what happened, but he has spoken about the crimes of the Holocaust. He has recounted acts of barbarism. He recalls that he witnessed an SS guard kill a baby. So he has come out. I think that the problem with Groening is that he hasn't taken the next step. He hasn't, he's rejected admitting his complicity, but he has not admitted that he was involved and that he is responsible. And he talks about being a small cog in the large machinery of murder. But the point is that even if you're a small cog, you play a role in the murders. And that's what the indictment says.
What penalties might he be subject to if he's found guilty on 300,000 counts of accessory to murder?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's facing a maximum possible sentence of 15 years in prison. Whether he will serve time, whether he will see prison from the inside, whether his health permits incarceration is a question that is being asked at the moment. I think the important thing is that the trial takes place. And if I can make that point, Leon, some people say, look, he's old, you know, he's in poor health, why is he being prosecuted? And I think the point is that just because someone is physically incapable or somebody is old doesn't mean that moral justice for the victims does not need to be served. And my view has always been that it's never too late to hold trials of Nazi perpetrators and accomplices. You can't have a statute of limitations on justice for the heinous crimes of the Holocaust. And Ephraim Zurov, who's one of the Nazi hunters currently working today from the Salmon Wiesenthal Center, says, you know, don't look at those people and say they look frail and weak. He says, think of someone who, at the height of his powers, devoted all his energies to murdering men, women, and children. So, you know, the passage of time, in my view, doesn't diminish the guilt of the killers. And I don't think, and I'm sure that your listeners would agree, that old age should not provide protection. The fact that they've reached an elderly age doesn't mean that they should not be brought to trial.
How many men, and we'll almost certainly only be talking about men, how many men do we think might still be alive that could be charged under using this precedent?
Well, you know, it's interesting because because I think you bring out a very important point about how the German judicial system so far has dealt with bringing to justice the perpetrators. And it is the view of most experts that it's an ongoing scandal, because out of the 6,500 former SS members who served at Auschwitz and survived the war, we've only had 43 SS men who have faced court. 9 have received life sentences, and 25 were sent to prison. So if you think about it, out of the hundreds and thousands of people who were involved, most of them went home. Most of them went back to their society, returned home, and never faced the justice of the court. So I think it's a terrible situation. And there's a message, I think, Leonie, is that in this trial is that it sends a signal to people today who are involved in genocides that the time may pass, but the day of judgment will come. No, they will not be able to escape the long arm of the law.
Dr. Abramovich, we know that after the war, many Nazis fled to places like South America. Could it be that some of these men are living in Australia today?
Oh, well, we've had cases before, and I'm sure there are. I don't know what the figures are, and I'm not aware of the details. But I think this is a question of societal responsibility. It's about sending a message of never again, that just because someone did this a long time ago doesn't mean they should be exonerated. And, the example that often is given, if someone raped children decades ago, and we found that person now in his 80s or 90s, would you still say they should not be tried? The victims deserve to have the perpetrators brought to justice.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. To the extent that we can generalise, how are European Jews who have lost family members in the Holocaust responding to this trial and potentially the others that will come after it?
The survivors, there'll be about, 50 Auschwitz survivors who are there as joint plaintiffs. And some of them will testify as witnesses. And it's very, very important for them. And I heard an interview with one of the Auschwitz survivors, and she said, Groening may be old, but so are the survivors. And there's no reason why he can't be brought before a court. For them, it's very late coming. But for them to stand up there in court, the victims can now stand tall and proud and say, we survived the war, we survived the Holocaust, we survived the death camps, and we are here to actually give our testimony. We are here to testify before court and before the world. And I think it's also a question for Germany. I think Germany is a little bit uncomfortable about this. But it's a reminder of the fact that the German people and the German nation voted for Hitler. They were involved in the final solution, and they are responsible for the death of 6 million Jews and millions of others. So this is a stain that will never be removed. And I think this trial is an important step in addressing the issue about the guilt and the responsibility of the German people.
There are a limited number of people in the world who describe themselves as Holocaust deniers. What does Oskar's coming forward and admissions of what happened at places like Auschwitz do for the Holocaust deniers in the past?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that in a BBC documentary, which I watched, I think, more than 10 years ago, he said that in the last decades of his life, he was really disturbed as it became clear that more and more people around the world were claiming the Holocaust never happened, was fabricated or exaggerated. And he says it, and I think that's quite remarkable, that he sees it as his task at his age to face up to those things that he experienced and to oppose the Holocaust deniers who claim that Auschwitz never happened. So this is, it's a blow to the solar plexus of anyone who can stand up and say the Holocaust never happened. The fact that you've got somebody who was in Auschwitz for 2 years, who saw the atrocities, who saw Jews being gassed, coming out and saying this happened. I think there's an important message being conveyed there.
It's been good to talk to you this morning. How long is this trial expected to run, Dvir?
It may run for weeks, perhaps months. I think we'll all be watching very closely. This is a lesson for the young generation and also for the older generation.